You don't earn that race on the day. You earn the race every single time it's raining and you put your trainers on and you walk out the door. You earn it when you have to get up early to train because you have no time. On the day, yes, it's difficult, but it's actually the easiest bit of the whole thing because you've done all the hard work. Now you've just got to put it into play, and you've got to use the power of your mind in that moment to keep you strong when it's tough on the day.
Today, I'm joined by Cara Cunniff, ultramarathon runner, Ironman finisher, Sahara desert racer and more. Someone who has pushed her body and mind through challenges most of us can barely imagine. But the reason I wanted Cara on the podcast isn't because of the medals or the mileage. It's because for years she couldn't see herself as an athlete. Even after running 6 days continuously across the Sahara, carrying all her kit, completing all the kilometres of swimming, cycling and running an Ironman, even after proving her resilience again and again. Her story is one of identity, comparison, self-belief, and the emotional journey that sits underneath every big achievement. We talk about the pressure we put on ourselves, regardless of the size of the challenge, the inner voice that holds us back, the impact of others' expectations, and how she finally came to own the word athlete in her 40s after years of not feeling enough. If you're someone who's active but never feels quite good enough, if you ever realise you're comparing yourself to your past or even future self, or the people around you, this conversation is going to help you start noticing and maybe questioning your own narratives around movement. Cara, you've done some very impressive things in your lifetime thus far. But it's safe to say that you haven't really called yourself an athlete or athletic until fairly recently, which is kind of strange given all the things you've done and particularly the way other people have viewed what you've done. So I'd love you to go back to the start of when you decided to start setting yourself challenges and where you were at in your life and why you started to set those challenges.
So I've always been relatively sporty all the way, through childhood, the netball team, the hockey team. I've always kept myself busy. I've always taken part in sports teams, and I've loved, Saturday matches or Wednesday matches. And then I joined what's termed the officer training corps at university. So it's kind of like a student. It's like a student entrance into the military. And it's a reserve thing, so it's not something you do all the time. And I also met my future husband. So roll forward a long, long time. We're still here, still married, and still, doing sport together. And so while I was at university, the first ever introduction to thinking about doing something to do with endurance was a half marathon. And so I was relatively fit, or so I thought, until I had 5 weeks to run my first half marathon. And I probably was running a 5K, and sometimes I might have a bit of weight on my back. But, I never really felt, I don't think I could ever really have said, and I know at the time I could never have said I was an athlete. I was just someone who needed to keep fit because I wanted to keep up with the other people I was training with. And that for me has always been, I suppose, one of my hang-ups when we're talking. We'll move forward to the story, but one of my hang-ups is always wanting to be able to keep up, not wanting to be at the back, not wanting to be last. And so I raced my first half marathon. And I was very happy with it. It was quite a painful experience. I think I did 5 runs before it, each one just starting at, kind of 5 kilometers, 7 kilometers, 10 kilometers, building up, and then, and I wouldn't recommend it to anyone, actually, because I did come over the line and I was happy. But I was a bit broken at the end.
I was going to say.
So, but in my head, that was like, that's okay, because tick, I've done that now. Then roll forward a little bit. I'd always sort of kept up the fitness, but never really thought about anything longer. and married my husband, who's still serving in the military and is very, very fit. Keeps himself fit, prides himself on being stronger now than he was when he sort of 30 years ago. And he raced a race in the Sahara Desert. And I was like, what is this race? This is like some like bonkers race that, nobody in their right mind would ever choose to do. And he raced it and finished it. And I thought, do you know what? Maybe I want to have a go at that. So,
Wow.
so it's an ultra marathon. It's 7 days. You carry all your food and equipment, and it's sort of up to 40, 42, 43 degrees, baking sun all day, across sand dunes. And it's essentially 6 marathons. And I mean, bearing in mind, so far I'd only ever raced a half marathon. It's like,
It's
okay, we're going to jump here.
it's quite a leap. It really is quite a leap. But what I want to ask there is, what was it just because your husband had done
Mm.
it? Or was it something in you that thought, I actually can? Did you have the
Oh,
belief
no,
that you could finish?
no,
No.
no. I had no idea what was going to happen. I mean, literally no idea. And I had said to my husband, how about we do it together? You've done it before. How about we do it together? And he said, I'm going to put my own team in again, because he wanted to do it again, but he wanted to race it hard. And I was like, I don't want to race this hard. And actually, we'll probably fall out over this. So I then said, I'll get my own team. So I emailed a couple of friends and they both said yes, to my horror. I was like, oh my gosh, I have to do this now. I've committed. I've asked people, and I now actually have to do this. I have to work out how do you do this? How do you train for something like this? And I think that's part of this journey of could I call myself an athlete? That identification piece, the identity piece inside me it was always a lot of things I've set myself challenges for. It was always an unknown. It wasn't either I've done a marathon, let's do another one. It was I've, raced across the Sahara Desert and finished. But actually, when I crossed the line, the imposter in me was still there and said to me in that moment, well, if you can do that, anyone can. So clearly it's not really worth it.
Wow. Which you absolutely know is not
Yeah,
the case.
absolutely.
Because how
100%.
many people do? And if they did, if it was that easy, everyone would be doing it. Everyone would be running marathons. Everyone would be going and doing very interesting long ultra marathons in a desert, up and down sand dunes.
Yes, absolutely. I think something that was sitting in the back of my mind was the fact that my mother, in my head, and not just in my head, my mother was, uh, for me, the iconic athlete. And so my mother was an England netballer, and she captained England netball looking back when we had black and white photographs. And beautiful photographs of her playing netball in the moment, goal attack for England, against Jamaica. Really just fantastic images that for me was very much that is an athlete and I am not that.
And tell me, you can't jump back into your mother's head, but
Mm,
as the child, as the daughter,
mm,
how do you think she saw herself, given that she had what most people would say is a very successful athletic
yeah,
career?
yeah. I think for her, uh, firstly, she was top of her game, absolutely top of her game, and she was multidisciplined. She was a brain's gone hurdler. She was a hurdler in New Zealand, and then she came to the UK and she worked her way up. And she really, put the time and energy into becoming that over a number of years. And in my head, I was like, well, let's just have a go at this and see what happens. And I think also for her that in her in maybe times gone by, the way we saw sport was very different. You were part of a team, or you went to the Olympics, or you played in the Commonwealth Games. Those in my head were athletes. I was just kind of having a go and seeing what would happen. And I do remember a conversation actually with my mum where she was saying, um, and I say this with love because I know it wasn't meant in a she wasn't well maybe it was meant in a slightly difficult way, I don't know. Um, she just said she never really saw some of the things I did as sport. I mean, they were adventures and they were achievements, but they weren't sport.
Yes, and that is very interesting because what makes sport, in inverted commas, better than other forms, and I wouldn't even just say of exercise, other ways of
Mm,
stretching ourselves, training, challenging, and seeing what our bodies can do. And obviously, a lot of that therefore involves exercise, but isn't it more about that? And
mm.
was she that was it was all into a more narrow box and a more
Yeah,
traditional
yeah.
box. And I would agree. I don't think that that necessarily was with love, to be honest.
No.
But it wasn't, obviously, it was more that her perception from her
Mm,
lens on the world
mm,
and her, let's say, view of
mm,
success was very much based on her own experience.
mm,
And yet everyone's version of success
mm,
is different, and rightly so. And I would love for you to sort of think about and talk about whether you feel how much you feel that rubbed off on you, that
mm,
there was a version of success that she created for you that
mm,
you felt you had to reach up towards, perhaps.
mhm. I think partly reflecting on what you've just been saying, social media plays a big role in this. Because actually now we can put on YouTube in the morning and we can spend 10 minutes doing yoga. That is sport. That is moving. And we can, as I have just done, I have just literally been on my stationary bike for 15 minutes before this, because it's good energy and it gives me a good
Mm,
energy before, maybe speaking to you. It gives me that boost.
yeah.
So it's more than just that competitive element of finishing the or going through the finish line. Now, however, that is great, and very important, and that's where I find it very hard, because I find it hard to actually just sit on a bike for the sake of it. I like the challenge. I
Right.
like okay, I signed up for this. How am I going to get there? What do I have to do? And crossing that finish line. And for me, there is a really deep emotional piece about that. So I subsequently, following the race I mentioned, the Marathon des Sables is the race in the Sahara. I then went on to race Ironman triathlon. So it's all long distance. It's a 3.8 kilometer swim, follow sea swim or lake swim, depending on where in the world you do it. Then followed by a 180-kilometer bike ride, and then a marathon. And
And I
again,
and I have first-hand experience of this, not from competing, but from
she's
watching my husband do it
you live with
and
it.
seeing all the competitors, particularly the only
Mm,
part you really get to see well
mm,
is the marathon, and seeing people at the end of what is, there's a lot of very broken people in that, because you have to train hard for that. That's not something that you can just
mm.
decide to do. I doubt you would be able to finish unless you were made of incredibly strong stuff. So
Yes.
hats off, because I just think that's incredible. Everything you've said is incredible. Most people would not be able to achieve that without an ever such a long run in.
I think yes, and also it's the emotional commitment to it. So for me, what during the training, so when I signed up for the first one, we'd just undertaken a military move to another country. My husband was a little bit worried about what I was going to do with my time, because I'd been running a business, I'd sold it, I'd moved, and then I had a year before we were moving again to another country. And in that year, it was like, what are you going to do with yourself? You're going to be a nightmare. You need to find something to do. So I signed up for an Ironman, of course, and I'd never ridden a bike. I mean, I'd ridden a bike to the shops, but I'd never clipped in. Which point, when I clipped in the first time, I fell off. I had never run a marathon, so yes, I had competed in like the Marathon des Sables, and there is a marathon day. There was a marathon day, which was like the second last day. So, but it's a different experience of running a marathon in its own entirety, in that what I'd say is more like running a marathon, because it was road running.
Yeah.
And the thing that got me through that, the training, because actually, I think in any race, any sport, anything where you start something and then want to finish it, whether that's on one day or over 6 days, uh, you don't earn that race on the day. You earn the race every single time it's raining and you put your trainers on and you walk out the door. You earn it when you have to get up early to train because you have no time. Not on the day. On the day, I mean, yes, it's difficult, but it's actually the easiest bit of the whole thing, because you've done all the hard work. Now you've just got to put it into play, and you've got to use the power of your mind in that moment to keep you strong when it's tough on the day.
So tell me about the power of your mind in those training sessions, because
Mm,
to equate this to the rest of us mere mortals, I would love to sort of get your help with how you do that with and without a goal. So my goals are
mm,
about staying strong, being capable, being able to do all the things that I want to keep doing, not necessarily with a goal at the end. Part of this for me has come from the fact that prior to being in pain, I was doing much
yeah,
shorter length triathlons, running races. I only got to half marathon stage and that really killed me. But I did love the sense of achievement.
mm,
Absolutely. I never thought about whether I was an athlete or not, because I literally did not put myself in that category. But that didn't matter. I did enjoy the process. I kind of feared the race as well,
mm,
but at the same time, I knew I would get through it,
mm,
because my personality is that I'm going to finish this come hell or high water, which is not a good thing in some ways, because just like those people running the Ironman and seeing them at the end, they were pushing their bodies, some of them to such an extreme that I knew some of them might not ever recover,
mm.
having
Yeah,
seen people
yeah,
being airlifted and so on.
yeah, yeah.
So there comes a point when, is it right or wrong for you, and so on. But my mindset, I'm lucky, I suppose, that that goal of living a good quality life is enough for me to get me out of bed to train in the morning, to go on the walks I like to do, and to do the activities I know that are going to take a bit more. So what mindset do you have that you have brought to all those sessions, because that's so much more intense than what I'm talking about?
I think the mindset partly is and resources available, is having people around me that supported me on the journey. Because sometimes when it was really tough, I didn't have it in me to get myself out the door. And it was, my children motivating me mentally to say, "We're going to come and watch you, mummy. We're really excited." And they were little at the time, and getting older, but I wanted to inspire them
Mhm.
to know that this was possible. And also, there were times I had to lean on my husband, come out with me on the bike, because I'm just tired. I'm really tired. My body's tired. And I know I have to push through this. And I think also recognizing that there is a difference between pain of injury and pushing through, because you have to break yourself a little bit to build yourself.
Mhm.
And I would say that very carefully here, because you have to know the line, but that's getting to know your body.
Mm.
What is the line when you can go out and you're shattered, but you're not hurting. You're just tired, and you know that you have to get another session done that week for whatever reason. So it's the strength and the fine line between pain, real pain, like you're hurting yourself, you're injuring yourself, which of course when you're doing any form of training, you just do not want to injure yourself,
No.
and learning when to stop. That moment I have to stop because I am injuring myself,
Yeah.
and the recoup after that will be so much longer. But also, for me, it was very much about visualization. And I don't think at the time, I don't think in any of this I recognized what I was doing until after it. So in sort of crossing the finish lines of Ironman, it would be for me visualizing holding the Union Jack above my head, and it would bring tears in a training run. It would
Yeah.
bring tears to my eyes. It would choke me because I was running. I remember one training run. It was 100. We'd cycled 140 kilometers, a cycle somewhere in the UK, and my husband had driven home with the bikes, and I was going to run home, and I got to about 5 kilometers out from home, and there was just nothing left in me. And it was like, do I call him? Do I not call him? I don't think I can get back. I'm cold. I'm tired. I'm feeling sorry for myself. And this image of just finishing that race and having the Union Jack, it
Mm.
chokes me now.
Yeah.
It's so emotive for me. And I think that visualization is, if you've never done it before, just recognizing the power and the strength of the mind to keep you moving one step more, one step more, one step more, whether that's 10 minutes, or whether that's 1 hour, or whether that's 4 hours.
Yeah.
We all, in any form of fitness, get to a point where we are crossing the line into stretching ourselves into new fitness. And it's in that moment that we sometimes need a bit of help. And if
Yeah.
that's the power of that image that will
Yeah.
take us there, your children maybe at the end, or whatever that might be.
Or accountability partner type thing. So I
Yeah.
think we we put so much on ourselves, expect so much of
Mm.
ourselves, and we expect willpower to be
Oh.
sufficient. And it's not. It's really, really not. And some of us are better at creating really good habits.
Mm.
But as you say, on those more tricky days, on those more tired days, those things are just not going to help, are they? You need to have other people around you, like you were saying. And I don't think it has to just be family, but knowing that you need that support, or knowing that that support can help you, which triathlon's a really good example of this, and running on its own,
Mm.
because there's loads of brilliant
Mm.
running clubs and triathlon clubs.
Yeah.
And I think particularly with triathlon, it's a real community,
Mm.
because you're trying different sports. And one of the things that I loved about triathlons particularly was the fact that no one ever really knew whereabouts you were in your race. So there
Yeah.
was no one, with a
Mm.
marathon or something, there's a finish and there's a time, and everyone can
Mm.
see how fast or slow you've been, kind of thing. And yes, it's sort of the same with a triathlon, but because you go out in waves.
Mm. Yeah.
I love that. You could be in the fourth wave. And I actually, just to tell a little story, I did, when I couldn't run anymore, I was still pushing myself unnecessarily and I was trying to keep up with the family. The boys were doing it, my husband was doing it. We did a triathlon in Ireland, and there was no way I could run it. I was still in a lot of pain. So I did a swim bike. And actually it worked okay. I wasn't too bad. This was a point when I was recovering, but I still should not have been pushing myself, because once I finally gave up all the goals and all the pressure on myself, I actually genuinely started to get better. So for me, mindset around this is hugely important. But the funny story about that was that, because lots of other people were doing the full three, I came in early looking ever so fresh off the bike, having not had to run. But I also came in alongside a wave of people who'd done double the distance and all three disciplines, looking absolutely shattered. And there was I, looking fantastic and fresh to get my medal,
I
and they
love
gave me
it.
the wrong medal, and then had to say, no, it's that medal,
It's that
sorry.
medal, a different medal.
But I still felt great.
Of course, of course. And well done you, though.
Well, yes and no. I think there's a lot of lessons, and to talk a little bit more about this mindset piece, it's that inner voice of listening to, not listening to inner voice, what your inner voice is saying, not listening to your body. I really wasn't. And I'd been in pain for a good couple of years at this point, and I was still pushing through. I was not listening. And it was, for me, it was all about the people around me, but not putting any pressure on me. It was me putting pressure on myself about what they were achieving and whether I should be up there with them. And you've talked about your mum, you've talked about your husband, you talked about your kids, not that they're putting any pressure on you, but you sort of put that pressure on yourself in a lovely way. And you know, I do a lot of what I do because of my boys. Absolutely, of course we do. But if you stripped all that away, Cara, would you still do the things? And my belief here is that you probably still would, because you're obviously tenacious. You like to, as you say, set a goal, and then you like to go for it. And you use that as a way to keep yourself active, and motivated. But would you? Do you think you still would?
Yeah, I would. And I think for me, it's a bit about the diversity of the challenge. So it's trying new things. So not that long after that, it was like, well, okay, we're going to San Francisco for a family wedding. Let's go and escape from Alcatraz. So, swimming from Alcatraz. So for me, it's very much, I do like the unknown. I do like let's try something new in a safe environment, sort of. That is going to stretch me in something I didn't know that was possible. And I even think if that's something that you do on repeat, so say you do a park run and you race park run, and then next week, and you look at, for me, I would be on that data within the minutes of it being released to see, right, where was I, which position? Okay, next time I want to be up there, I want to be beating, because I am competitive. That drives me a lot. I am competitive. So whether it took a while for me to be able to switch on and say, Cara, you now can call yourself an athlete. It took me an Ironman before I could say, okay, now I see myself as an athlete. I can use that term. And I had a coach. And up till then, every time he used the word, I was like, don't use that word. It's not me. It's not me. I do not associate with that word. But then after that, after getting my head around, I had to do an Ironman to achieve that I felt that ownership over the word. And actually, it's, looking back, whether you do a 5K, and for me, improve my time, because if I improve my time, I'm getting stronger, and actually that's what I want to do. I want to get stronger. And so I think, yes, I would do it anyway. And if it was sort of racing Ironman, it would be, can I get further into the pack in the swim so that I get carried along quicker? For those who aren't aware, when you start off on the swim, and actually days gone by a few years ago, you would all start together.
In the big ones you do. Yeah.
Everybody started together rather than waves. And the first one I ever did, it was like, there is no way on earth I am going to be anywhere near anybody else. I do not want my goggles kicked off.
That was
la,
me.
la, la, la. Yes.
I went way out the side in my little swim because I was like, there is not a chance. Yeah.
Do not come near me, anybody else. And then the second time I was like, right, I'm braver now and I'm stronger. So I'm going to go into the pack. And it was a game changer. I mean, it's a game changer in terms of speed, but also courage and excitement. And I'm a stronger swimmer. And actually, I can hold my own in the pack. And the joy of that was I beat my husband. small joys in the swim. I was 50 kilometers ahead on the bike when he passed me, and he's like, what are you doing ahead of me? It's like, that's because I went into the pack.
So tell me, is that the moment that you realized you're an athlete?
Oh, do you know, there was actually, it's interesting because there was a moment of, okay, you are stronger on the bike, but this just shows that when we all find our space, and with a bit of confidence and a bit of practice and getting out there and doing it regularly in any sport, yoga. I mean, I'm appalling at yoga, but I'm not as appalling as I was.
Yeah.
And it's that repetitive nature of keeping strong.
Yeah. And so that was the second Ironman you did where he overtook you. I hope you're enjoying the conversation. I'm just taking a quick break to ask you a question. Have you started to notice that the everyday things you used to do without thinking, like getting up off the floor, lifting the shopping, or hopping over a stile, now take more effort than you feel they should? Well, if your answer is yes, you are far from alone. And I'm excited to tell you that I've written a book to help you. It's called Move Well for Life: Unlock the Life-Changing Power of Everyday Movement. As you'll know from listening to this podcast or following me online, I don't talk about chasing fitness trends or imposing rigid routines. Instead, my message is all about learning how small, natural movements woven into your daily life can help you feel stronger, more confident, and ready for whatever life throws at you. Move Well for Life is available to pre-order now, and it's out in January here in the UK and Europe, and later next year in America. You can find the link in the show notes to read more about it, or simply search Move Well for Life and Wendy online. I firmly believe that every movement counts, and it's never too late to reclaim yours. Now, back to the episode. So after the first Ironman, that was when your mindset changed, because it is such, I mean, we're talking about pretty much all day. You get up very early, you swim, you start swimming at dawn effectively, and it can go on until dusk, or later, depending on where you are in the world. Yeah,
Yes.
which, that's a long, long time. Um, so that's really interesting that it took such a big chunk. But if you compare that to the Marathon des Sables, that was still massive as well. So what do you think shifted within you that made that change? Because what you've just demonstrated by the fact that in the second Ironman, you had decided you're going to go in the middle of the pack. You were pushing yourself more. You weren't in your comfort zone, but you had self-belief that drove you, and actually therefore your results were better. And I'm not wanting to make this about being quicker, results being better, and so
No,
on.
no, it's not about
Ultimately, what I mean is
yeah.
that self-belief
Mm,
gave you fuel,
mm.
that without it, we can't have the same fuel in life. So
No.
what do you think, if you can
I no,
put
I
it
think
into
I
words? I
do
mean,
know. I think after the two friends and dear friends, still dear friends that I raced the Marathon des Sables with were unbelievably strong. And they what tended to be ahead of me most of the race. And so I looked at their backsides for a lot of the race. And I think part of it was that we hadn't actually had some conversations, the deep conversations as a team about how we're all feeling about the fact that, maybe I have this aspiration and you have this aspiration. What are the feelings that are sitting under the surface? And I think if we'd had that conversation, I think it probably would have been different in terms of that experience. For me, I know anyway, because I sort of grumbled, I didn't speak up, I looked at their backsides for a lot of the race. I fell out with one of my closest friends now. I fell out with her. We didn't talk for a day on the race. Uh, and in some respects, that was good because it took away from the pain, the actual physical pain, because we were in our own spaces of being grumpy. I mean, the irony, right? Go that
mm,
far and do all this and then be grumpy with one of your teammates for one of the days. And whereas I think, and that was all resolved, of course, and it was fine. But I did not have the same satisfaction at the end of that race, regardless of the outcome. And actually, the outcome in that race doesn't matter unless you're racing it. All you want to do is
it's
finish.
complete, isn't it?
Just
Yeah.
you just want to finish it. And whereas racing Ironman and racing and swimming, escaping from Alcatraz, it's me and it's only me,
Mm.
and I have no one else to compete against. So I felt secure in that space, I think. And I think that probably was the start of the transition, as in the first Ironman was just an unknown, and I was carrying a lot of baggage, internal baggage in that space. And then by the time I got to the second one, it's like, I feel I own this now. I feel I own this. And actually, when I'm swimming in the club, I'm strong in the club. You know, I'm good at the, I'm good on the bike, and I can hold my own. I'm not going to win this. I mean, I am so way down that curve, but I am. But I can hold my own, and I will finish, and I'm secure in that, and I'm secure in myself. And I learned a lot more about myself. I learned a lot more. So, for example, I'd put a poem. I had a poem on taped to my bike,
Oh,
so that when it got difficult,
mm,
I read the poem and reminded myself that this is why I'm here. And in those moments when it's really, really hard, you've got to be that person. Be
mm,
that person. So I just had resources, even in that very short, I'm on a bike. What resources can you really have
yeah.
to help you? So I had a poem taped to my bike.
Oh, that's lovely. And words are so powerful. Words really do, the particular words really
Mm,
do affect.
mm,
And uh, having them like that or around the house to be able to seep into you
mm,
about what you, not necessarily what you want to be, but how you want to feel
mm,
and about yourself. um I think it's a really, really powerful thing to
mm,
do, because
mm,
we need those reminders,
mm,
because a bit like your head in the Marathon des Sables, you were sort of self-involved because you were so, your comparison levels were so high
yeah,
with others that
yeah,
you'd forgotten almost about the fact that you may have been behind them, but you were still doing it. You were
mm,
with them.
mm,
And I think that's a really interesting thing about our how we see ourselves in broader terms,
yeah,
because I talk a lot about the sort of narratives around exercise
mm,
in the modern world, um, because I feel that sadly there has become quite negative
mm,
connotations and a lot of pressure
mm,
around the fact that if you don't exercise, then you're not uh, good enough
mm,
or whatever, which I think is all absolute nonsense. Now, with my now lens on the world compared to the one before, and I think it's so important that, and perhaps you would have said to your younger self that those things are not valuable. They're not good fuel. They're not healthy fuel to drive you.
mm,
And if we can become more aware at any age whether we are comparing ourselves to anyone and everything. But I also include in this, and shameless plug, mention this in my book, is the comparison with your past self
mm,
and the comparison with your future self that
mhm,
doesn't even exist.
mm,
And yet we set ourselves up to potentially have issues because we think we'll only have achieved or be good or be an athlete when,
mm,
rather than, as you said beautifully in the episode earlier, those moments are only made in the run up to,
yes.
and therefore the hard work, um, and the getting out of bed when you don't want to, but also the joys of some of those training sessions where you
Mm,
feel fantastic.
mm,
Um, and I just think that whole comparison piece is so important for people to become, to try to see if
mm,
they're really deeply honest with themselves, if they are doing that. Because I think it's hard for us to do.
mm. Yes. And I think actually you just took me back to a picture I remember seeing of myself after it was after the London Marathon, which I've only ever run two marathons. I mean, it's not something that I've done regularly by any stretch. And no, it wasn't. It was after the Paris Marathon, and I remember seeing this picture of myself running, and it was just a bit weird because it was like, that's me. I'd never really seen myself
Yes.
from how a camera captured me. And, I obviously went out, got training, had kit, looked in the mirror before I went out running, but nothing else really. And then suddenly somebody else photographed this of me, and it was like, gosh, that's 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 awesome. I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's me.
Yeah.
And I hadn't recognized that in all, I think maybe the lack of belief in myself. was
Yeah,
I didn't see how I was transitioning. And maybe there was a journey. There was a journey that I had to go on in that space. And I don't think that journey stops. I think, we all continue this journey. So yeah, yeah. An
amazing.
observation. Just yeah.
I know exactly what you mean, and I think that when you're caught by a camera in the
Mm,
middle of doing something, it's your expression that you don't recognize. So
yeah.
yes, you're in the kit and you're looking like the person doing the thing
Mm,
that you're seeing all around you, but you don't particularly recognize in yourself. But I think it's that look in
mm,
your eyes, the expression
mm,
that you don't recognize because you don't see it in the mirror. And
mm.
it's one of, I'm doing this, I'm going for it.
Yeah.
And so it's slightly alien, and yet it also feels great because you recognize that expression in other people that you admire,
Yes,
perhaps.
that is true. It is really true.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and yeah, no, and I would agree. You know, I look back at some pictures of me, and it feels like a different person in a lot of
Mm,
ways. But I
mm,
am proud that I did do
mm,
those things. Less proud of the pushing when I shouldn't have, but at the same
mm,
time, I'm still grateful. As you say, it was all part of a journey that's got
mm,
me to where I am now.
mm.
So, what lessons do you think that people can learn from your experience? Because effectively, what we've been talking about is we're redefining the word athlete, is what we've said. Because what does athlete really mean? And does any word really hold the sort of weight of importance that just moving your body, feeling good about moving your body because you have the capability to do that, as so many don't. Um, and as you said, pushing yourself outside your comfort zone,
Mm,
trying to learn more about yourself because you're challenging yourself, which can be at any level at all.
absolutely. Yeah.
What would you say then about the word athlete?
I actually think I prefer the word mover. You know, it 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 it's it's something that actually, I mean, we've spoken in the past, and through those conversations, for me, it was, gosh, what do I feel about that word now? Because I couldn't own it. Then I did own it, but actually, does it even matter? And maybe it doesn't even matter because, I mean, fundamentally, any form of movement, whether that's going for a walk, is healthy for us.
Mm,
It's good for us. So I think that's the first thing is that actually whatever label we put on ourselves, maybe it's restraining us, and
yeah.
maybe it's holding us back from being who we truly could be in that sport movement space,
Mm.
whatever that looks
And
like for
and
you.
I would just extend that out to the conversation I was having
Mm,
before about the difference between, this is more my space, obviously, the difference
mm,
between exercise and movement, and
mm.
whether, don't, let's not denigrate movement, because
No,
it's the most important
yeah,
foundation to being able to exercise. Because if
absolutely.
you can't move with
Mm,
mobility, everyone knows if they get a bad knee or their hip is causing them pain, there's not a chance that they can exercise freely and well and be going out and doing the things they're
yeah,
passionate about. So actually, to me, movement's almost the start point.
like
It's
the
even
start.
more important.
Yeah, it's the start of the journey. It's
Yeah.
the start of that complete journey. Wherever you are on a spectrum of, whether you're racing ultra marathons or whether you're racing a 5K or whether you're going for a walk,
Yeah.
which my husband and I now do regularly. Tonight, we're going for a long walk because it's good for us. And we get to spend time together.
Yeah.
And we get so much more out of it just because we're spending time together
Mm.
and we do it together.
Yeah.
So,
And actually, I'll just add to that, there's nothing better often for a relationship, because you don't have to eyeball each other. You can have quite happy pauses, but
yeah.
also because you're walking, the endorphins
Mm.
are released. So actually,
Mm.
you like each other that little bit more.
Yes.
Win, win, win.
Is a true win. I think the other thing is, do not underestimate what is possible. Do not put yourself in a box that says I can't do that, because I have seen remarkable people achieve, finish, complete, kind of, long races that ordinarily, I think, I mean, I didn't give myself credit. And I would say I'm fully abled. And I think, I have seen some incredible um, marathon des Sables, blind people being led. And it suddenly puts my race into complete insignificance. So, do not underestimate what we are capable of.
Yeah.
And if that is your thing, whatever that is, whether you want to start walking, whether you want to just get up and start. And I listened to this. It was a couple of weeks ago on a podcast as I grumble about getting my sports kit on, and I talk myself out of it, and I finally get on the bike and I whinge about it. And I've wasted a couple of hours getting ready to go on a bike, and I could have just got on it. And it's a stationary bike. It's in a bedroom. It's not difficult. And actually, had I just got on and done it, it would have been over and I could have stopped thinking about it. So do the whinging when you're doing the thing. Just get the kit on and don't talk yourself out of it. Because I think we all often recognize once we start,
Yeah.
gosh, what was I whinging about? What was I thinking was going to be so bad about this? Because
Yeah.
it's never as bad as you think it's going to be.
No, and you can feel quite good during. For
Oh,
me, like, and it's for me, a walk is up there with one of the best feelings because you are going at a pace where you can really take in your surroundings. You can still think pretty clearly. You can come up with some great things. And yet you're moving at the pace you want to move. So I get so much from that. So for me, I'm lucky enough that the thing that I know is doing me good, I also know I'm going to enjoy it. And that's not the case for everyone, perhaps, unless you start to slowly build up and look at those things. What are the things that make you feel better? And tends to be, again, those endorphins get going, those hope molecules and myokines, then you're going to feel better, and you're certainly going to feel better after. So it's finding whatever is the carrot for you that is going to be, yeah, I know I'll feel good during. And like you were saying, get your kit set up the night before. If it's going to not happen because you've left it 3 hours in the day, do it first thing in the morning and wake up half an hour earlier to do it. And then if you feel like that's ticked off the exercise box, if that's the way you need to see it, then still all good. Now, I want you to keep moving through the day, and you don't need any fancy kit or equipment for that, just to say. But at least then you're in the mindset that it feels good to move my body, my brain, my outlook on life feels better because I'm going. And that's what I do as well. That's my first thing in the morning. And I try to make it as short a time from waking up to getting going as I can, so that I'm just doing it. And I think that's human nature. I think that's normal. So to wrap up, we've redefined the word athlete. You have certainly talked a lot about the importance of checking in with that mindset and whether it's real, and noticing what is um, a really incredible thing to do, or just noticing that you can and being aware of that. But I think one of the biggest takeaways I've got from this is applaud yourself no matter what. Whenever you move in whatever way, make sure that you realize the effort that it took and you are proud of yourself, because cutting out that external noise of other people trying to notice when that's happening and choosing not to listen, choosing to make up your own narrative. Um, so if there's anything that I would love you to finish on, it's if you were your younger self and you were doing that marathon de sable, and you, which I'm probably pronouncing wrong, but and you knew everything you know now, what would you have said to yourself to change that experience for yourself?
I would have talked to my team. I would have shared how I was feeling. And I think it would have been a completely different story.
Honest, honest with those around you, to be honest with yourself. And I think we often tell ourselves absolute porkies.
Mhm. Mhm. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm
Yeah.
no good. I'm not good enough. I'll never finish. I can't make it. And sometimes it is as simple as um so very 1 minute story in the race. I remember We have a long day. It was a 50 miler. I mean, it was pretty revolting. Uh, you race through the day, except we walked through the day as the sun was high, and then we started running at night when the sun dipped. And I just hit a wall. I could feel a niggle in my shoe. I could feel a blister, and I just thought, I'm not going to make this. This is, and my mind was just doing somersaults, and I had to stop to check my shoe because I could feel the blister, and I sorted my foot out. I tied my shoelace. 2 minutes it would have taken. I stood up and I looked around, and the world was different. And it was because I paused and I'd had to think about something different. And I'd had to think about my shoe and my foot and my blister. So in that moment when you're talking yourself out of doing something that's going to get you moving, just stick your trainers on. You change the setting, change the narrative, if you said, because that is how you will move better and ultimately keep our bodies working.
Fantastic. I can't add on that. So that's brilliant. Absolutely. No, I completely agree. And learning the skill to be able to do that starts with noticing, starts with awareness, and then being able to make the shift. And say, as I talk about the my fairy grandmother, I call her, and the gremlin, and just notice when the gremlin is much too loud and let that lovely grandmother start chatting. Thank you so much for your time, Cara. It's been really, really interesting. And you are an amazing person for all your achievements, but most importantly, for being able to share your thoughts, your innermost feelings about things, which is even more important to me.
Thank you. It's been lovely being here. Thank you for opening my mind to things I hadn't seen.
I hope you've enjoyed listening, and if you have, you can help by doing 3 things. First, press the follow button to tell podcast platforms you want to listen again. Second, please give the show a 5-star rating and leave a review about why you liked it. And third, I'd love you to share it with friends and family or on your socials, for which I'm truly thankful. Finally, if this podcast is making you want to start reclaiming your own movement, join me in the Reclaim Movement membership for classes, both live and by replay, and countless videos of mini movement breaks to add into your daily life, covering practical and fun, important natural movements. Visit reclaimmovement.co.uk/membership to get started with your 7-day free trial. See you for the next episode, and thank you so much for listening.